So this is the Emms Tote as it's made exactly as the Emms Tote pattern. It's got the front panel on the front with two side pieces down either side, the base, the top and the belt. And on the back it has got one pattern piece with the overlay and the top and the belt. So that inside it's got a phone slip pocket and another slip pocket. Now the booster offers different options for this. Now, as you can see, this pocket has a curved top. It's also got a magnetic snap if you want to add that option. And on the back, I've also used the same panels, the 3 panels, and you got various options for pockets you can do. Now this is the simple slip pocket, and it gives you lots of different options. The third option is this slip and zipper pocket. So yes, it's got the zipper pocket in the middle and the slip at the top. So that's your 3 exterior pocket options. You've also got the top closures. There's 2 options for a zipper closure, and you then got the simple magnetic snap closure option. So they're all included in the booster pack. So let's have a look what options we've got for inside. Now we have got a full divider and we've got a zipper pocket. So we've got a bigger pocket that doubles as a divider if you didn't want to put the full divider in. And as you can see, I've just sewn mine in 2 so that it creates 2 smaller pockets, one for a phone and one for something else. So that is the boost for Emms. Now what I'm going to do today is go through all these different options as they are in the pattern. So this is the top closure. We have 2 options. We prepare this at step 1 in the Emms Tote pattern, and it goes onto the C top pieces. So we will start with the option for the folded method. There's 2 methods, the folded and the mitered. So I will do one side of each just to show you how they're done. So I do suggest using a lighter weight fabric for the zipper closure, a contrast or your lining, or just something not going to get too bulky. And you'll also need 2 C top pieces from the Emms Tote pattern. So these should be all prepared to sew as per that pattern. We also want to take our zip. So what we'll do is we will start with one side. So we need 1 closure. And what we'll do is put double-sided tape down either side of the short end. Now I use 3mm 1/8 of an inch double-sided tape, but you can use either. I just don't like it getting in my seam allowance too much. So if you used 10mm or 3/8 of an inch, it would fold over perfectly, but you would be sewing through it. So just fold those over by the seam allowance, which in this case is 10mm or 3/8 of an inch, and we want to fold that wrong sides together and secure it onto the tape. So next we want to draw a line down the center. So you can either fold it in half to get the center line, or you can just measure it and fold that line accurately. So you can do these in any order, as long as all the prep work is done before you start sewing it. So we also should have prepared our zip before all this. This is what I start with in the pattern. So take your zip and pull about 20mm or 3/4 of an inch of the teeth apart and fold it over at a 90-degree angle. So you're tucking it in at the back, or tucking the fabric piece in at the back and folding it over. So the teeth just bend around the corner at a 90-degree angle. Now you can secure this any way you want. You can glue it, you can sew it, you can tack it. I find it just as easy just to tack it when I'm on video. If I have got organized beforehand, sometimes I glue it and just clip it so that it sets while I'm doing everything else. So do both sides of that zipper. that's what we have with our zip. And then we'll put that to one side just for now. With our closure, we have got it folded over on the ends and we've got our line. Now take your C-top from your pattern. Now as you can see, we should have marked one edge as the exterior side because the other side is going to go to the lining and this side is going to go to the exterior of our bag. So fold it over to the right side. So we want to put our closure right sides together on top of the C-top. So we want to line it up so that this bottom edge here is 30 mil or 1.25 inches away from the bottom of the C-top. So that's the lining edge of the C-top. So that center line we just drew should be 1.25 or 30 mils away from the bottom of the C-top. Now when I say the bottom of the C-top, that is the lining edge of the C-top. So you can either pin that in place or you can put some long clips in just to hold it together. I always double check this because if it's crooked, your zipper closure is going to be crooked in the bag. So what we want to do now is sew exactly along that line just on the closure. Come to the end, pivot, turn back and sew back along the line. Back stitch at the beginning and end because this has to be really secure. So you can see I've started sewing exactly where it stops and starts. So now we want to put double-sided tape along the two raw edges. So these are the long edges and then fold it over by the same width as our seam allowance. So 10 mil or 3/8 of an inch. Now again, you don't need to use double-sided tape. You could just fold it over and press it or just fold it over and clip it. Now you do want these to be folded as evenly as possible because this is along the edge of your zipper. So making sure that's all nice and secure, what we want to do now is fold those two long edges over. So just fold it away from the sewing line and give it a bit of a finger press so that we can fold the closure in half. Then fold the C-top backwards. So you've got the C-top wrong sides together and the zipper closure wrong sides together. So now we want to get our zipper because we're going to sandwich it between these two folded edges of our zipper enclosure. So we want to keep the longer or deeper part of the C-top on the top because this will be the right side up. So if you clip your C-top piece in half out the way, it makes it so much easier. So if you put a piece of double-sided tape along the back, it makes it so much easier. You don't have to look or keep an eye on both sides. Now I just suggest using 3mm or 1/8 of an inch tape here if you don't want it in your seam allowance. So we want to place our zipper right side up, so wrong sides together on the enclosure here. And we want to place it in from the little short end, 6mm or 1/4 of an inch or less than that, and have it sitting nice. And it's actually easier if you split your zipper tape here. So when you turn it over from the edge, the long edge, we want our zipper sitting up about 10 mil or 3/8 of an inch from the edge of the zipper closure. So to the top of the teeth, to the edge of that closure, we want it about 10 mil or 3/8 of an inch. Now fold the other half over the top so it's sandwiched in between, and see it started 6mm or 1/4 of an inch in from that end. And these little clips just actually clip over the top, but secure it in place however is easier for you. You can use another piece of double-sided tape if that makes it easier. These clips fit perfectly over the top, so I just use those. And you will have your long tail hanging to the right on one of them and left on the other, and make sure that's how it is. Don't try and change it. So we want to start sewing from the exact point where the closure meets the C-top. We don't want to be sewing down onto the C-top at all. It needs to fold back out flat. and backstitch really well. And we're going to sew down to the zip, along the zipper edge and back to where it meets the C-top. I use an L to keep it all in place as I'm sewing it. So that's our zipper closure all completed. Now you will have two opposing ones obviously, and as long as you keep the wider part of the C-top on the top, they are going to be reversed. So that is the folded method, and as you can see, if you look in the corner and pull it apart, you can see the very tiniest little raw edge. Now that's how we normally do recess zipper, but we've also included a mitered version, which means you have no raw edges at all. So let's have a look at how that's. So for the mitered corners, you need to have the BA1M pieces for the closures, and you also need a C-top from the Emms Tote pattern and the other half of the zip that we prepared earlier. So if you're just joining the video now, you may want to jump back to see how we prepared our zip. Now what we want to do is put double-sided tape. Now I do suggest 3mm or 1/8 down the raw edges, but keep it out of the ends. So keep it about an inch away from each little angled corner. This is a bit tricky, but you'll see why we do it now as opposed to later, because it is more tricky later, trust me. Now again, you don't need to use double-sided tape. You can glue these in place later, or you can simply just iron them in place once we've done our mitering. Now we want to draw some lines. We want to draw a line down the center, again like we did before, either fold it in half to get that halfway point or measure it, and draw a line right down the middle. Now we also want to draw a line 6mm or 1/4 inch in from each of these little diagonal corners. So if you've got a ruler that has 1/4 inch lines on it, it's perfect. Line that up with the diagonal edge and draw exactly 6mm or 1/4 inch in from each of those ends on all 4 of those little 45-degree angles. So do that on all 4 of our corners. Now we want to fold a corner up at 45 degrees. So the short edge is now level with the long edge, and the little tiny angled corner at the end is folded in half. Now make sure they line up perfectly. It's easier to put a clip on the very end piece and then clip along the top edge, because what we're going to do now is sew along the line we drew across that corner. I do suggest starting at the raw edges, coming over to the fold and back again and back stitching, so that you don't have back stitching in the fold. Then we're going to snip, starting closely to the sewing at the folded piece, and go out on an angle. So hopefully you can see that. Now do get your finger in there and open that little piece of seam that's left, and just finger press it open. Now we're going to repeat that with all 4 corners. So just work your way around, again folding it in half so that the short edge lines up and the long edge at the top lines up. Now the more accurate this is, the more accurate your mitered corners are going to become. And again, we're going to start sewing from that little point across and back. And trim again, starting at the folded edge, going out on an angle to the raw edge. And just repeat with all the others. So now we want to push those corners through, so they're facing out to the wrong side. Now I get the end of a little paintbrush and push out just on the corner. Don't use anything sharp, else you'll be needing to redo these, and if you redo them, you'll find they're never even correctly. So what I find easier here, we want to take the double-sided tape off along the sides, is if you push your paintbrush into the corner, and while it's pushed out, secure the double-sided tape. Now here's where you can iron or you can glue. You just want to keep this as secure as possible. Now if you fold over these too much, it's not going to be a perfect 90-degree angle. You need to keep it at exactly the 10 mil or 3/8 of an inch. So again, if you push that into the corner and secure the tape while it's pushed in. And then just work around, folding over all your edges and pushing out your corners. Now the biggest issue I see is if the corners aren't pushed out properly, then it is going to look baggy in the corners. It's going to have excess fabric. So you do sometimes need to give them a little bit of pressure out into that corner and secure the tape around it. And if you're using fabric you can iron, I do suggest giving this a really good iron before you continue. The flatter this is, the better it's going to look when it's finished. And so that's all 4 of our corners. So just check they are out as far as they can. If you need to do it again and push it out more, do it for the sake of a few seconds to do that now. It makes all the difference down the track. Now get your C-top. And again, you have to have it the right way. We should have marked the exterior edge and the lining edge. Now we want to be working off the lining edge, not the exterior. So you should have marked the exterior edge on the pattern instructions. So now we want to line up the center line along the closure 30 millimeters or 1.25 inches up from the bottom of the lining edge, and either clip it or pin it in place. Now this one you can clip along the bottom because we've turned the edges up. You can clip along there. Make sure it's centered as well, because if it's not centered, your zip's going to be all screwy in the top of your bag. And make sure it's centered. Now what we're going to do is sew from the very edge of where they meet along that line to the other end, pivot back again right along our line and double back at the other end. Now we want to bring the edges of our closure together. So give them a bit of a finger press away from the C-top. And this is why we don't want to be sewing onto the C-top at all, because we need to fold it separate and independent. Now, as you can see, those corners should line up perfectly and have no raw edges whatsoever. So now we want to get some double-sided tape. You don't have to double-sided tape. You can just baste, you can sew, you can do whatever you like along here. Now I'm putting this on the back. Now this is the one that is against the shortest piece of the C-top. Then we want to get our zip, and we're wanting to sandwich it in the middle. So of course this is the other way around, so you need to start at the other end because we've already done one. So starting there, 6 mil in from the edge or from one of the mitered corners, and work along so that we've got 10 mil or 3/8 of an inch above the long edge. So if you flip it over to the back, you can see you've got from the edge of the closure to the top of the teeth, you should have about 10 mil or 3/8 of an inch of your zip. So press all that in place and keep it all nice and flat. Now fold over the other piece on top so that you're sandwiching your zip in the middle, and simply clip it all in place. It's easier to put a clip on the little short piece of the C closure before you put it along the top. And just clip your way along the edge. Now again, you could use more double-sided tape here if you're wanting it, if you're not so sure about it staying in place. And then again, make sure it's all nice and flat so that one side isn't longer than the other, and put a clip on the other side so it stays away from the C-top nice and flat, and make sure your zip is evenly along, leaving the long tail hanging out like we did before. So again, we're going to sew along here. Make sure that those little points are exactly even. So we're going to start sewing exactly at the point where the closure meets the C-top, but don't sew on the top at all. We want that open out flat later on. So we're going to sew down to the zipper edge, along the zipper, and then back towards the C-top, and make sure we backstitch at both ends. Now you can leave long tails and pull these through rather than backstitching and secure them really well at the other side. So as you can see, we have no raw edges at all. If we've done it well, we've got two perfect 90-degree angles that meet perfectly at either edge of our zip. So give that a bit of a press down, and that is the other side of our zip. So that would go together like that. We would put our zipper pull on the end, but we don't do that till we have finished the bag. So continue the bag as you do per the pattern, and when you get to step 5, make sure you place the C-tops so that the tail on the zip overhangs the right side on the front and the left side on the back. So that's how it goes on the bag. When you finish the bag, put your zipper pull on. Don't forget to mount the edges of your zip if it makes it easier to put your pull on. And then obviously you want to get both sides in the pull as even as possible, and then pull it down. Make sure the edges line up at the other end of the zip. Then we want to get our tab. Put a piece of double-sided tape down the middle long ways on the tab. Now you can finish this however you want. I like to put a vinyl tab on the end of mine because I don't want to be folding under edges. But if you're using cotton, you can cut it double width and do folds around all your edges. So just lay your zip so that it's halfway or just under halfway into the middle of your tab and fold it over the end. Now I trim mine down at this stage. Just run your scissors along the edge of your zip. Now I'm going to sew down from the folded edge across the zip and back to the folded edge. I don't actually sew over the folded edge at all. I think it just looks nicer that way. And I am going to put a rivet at either side of my zip on the tab, just on either side of the zip. I think it just finishes it really nicely. So burn any edges you've got on your cotton, but if you've used vinyl, please be careful that you're not melting your vinyl as well. And that is our zipper closure all done. So one side is the mitered on this and one side is the folded. So they look exactly the same as far as the structure goes, just one has got a different finish to the other, and that is how it sits in the bag at the top like that. So that's why you need to make sure the right sides are hanging over the front and the back so that you get your zipper overhang to the right of the bag. So for your interior divider, you will need 2 divider pieces, a trim, and a pocket lining from the Emms Tote pattern. Now in the pattern, I do ask that you don't interface to the edges on this to keep the bulk out of your lining. I'm using a very thin satin that frays like terrible, so I have interfaced mine. And as you will see, I've added a very thin fleece to my center because the person who wants this wants protection between, but that is definitely out of my seam allowances. So what we want to do is place them right sides together. So we want to place those right sides together, line up all the edges, and we want to clip along our angled corners at the bottom. And what we're going to do is sew across each of those at a 6mm or 1/4 inch seam allowance. Then we want to turn it to be right side out, roll the edges or press them so they're nice and flat at the bottom corners that we've just sewn. Now I'm going to baste along the top. We've got these wrong sides together. So if you've got fabric you can press, I would suggest pressing it at this stage. Now we're going to take our trim. Now I put double-sided tape down the middle of mine. Now I put 10mm or 3/8 of an inch tape down the middle. And then we want to place our divider so that it is just less than halfway onto our trim. I love these trims on pockets and things. And then we want to fold the trim over the top and securing the other half of the tape on the other side. Now we're going to sew along there as close to the edge of that trim as we can, catching both sides. So I like to go less than 1/8 of an inch or less than 3mm, but don't sew past the edges because we're going to clip those off. So just trim the edge of the trim. So that is our divider complete. So what we're going to do now is add this onto one of our linings. So get a lining piece off the Emms Tote pattern. Make sure you've marked your centers. Mark the center of your divider and line that up. So line up the bottom edge, centered. Now clip that in place and baste along the bottom. And then we want to draw some marks. So we want to mark down from the top on either side of the lining, 30 mils or 1 1/4 inch down from the top on either side. And then we line up the sides of the divider with that mark on the side of the lining. Clip all the way to the bottom on both sides, and then we want to baste those in place. Now this is going to pull up on the sides, so make sure it doesn't get caught up in behind and keep it out flat. So continue in the Emms Tote pattern, and when it comes to boxing the corners, it will be quite close and a bit fiddly because you are sewing in fairly close to your divider, but it won't catch in. What I do suggest when doing a divider pocket is that you do either a zipper pocket on the outside or a zipper pocket on the interior, and leave the bottom of the pocket open so that you can then pull the bottom of the lining up through the pocket, close it, and then close the zipper pocket as you would have done the bottom of the bag in step 8I of the Emms Tote pattern. So that completes our divider pocket. Next we're going to look at our large slip pocket. Now again, I suggest doing this with your prep work at step 1 of the tote pattern, and then fitting it to the lining and just continuing to finish the bag pattern. We need 2 of our large slip pocket pieces. Now these can either be in a lining or a contrast. So we want to take both of the BC1 slip pocket pieces. We want to place those right sides together and sew right around the edge, but leaving a turning gap in the bottom edge. So we're going to sew around these at a 6mm or 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So now we want to trim our corners. So don't trim them too close, but trim them definitely enough that you can get a clean turn on your corners. So when turning it through, don't push out anything sharp because there's nothing worse than having to go back and re-establish your corner. So just push it through gently. Now if you can iron your fabric, I suggest you do so, but push the corners out gently. Don't force anything really sharp into the corners. And what I forgot to do is top stitch. and then top stitch along the top. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to shorten this pocket from the bottom later on, and I'm going to divide it into two so that it is a double pocket. So what we want to do is clip the turning gap inwards and clip along the bottom. So again, if you can iron it, please do so. It makes a lot of difference. Now get our lining piece. So that's a G lining from the Emms Tote pattern, and line that up 65 millimeters or 2.5 inches up from the bottom, and make sure it's centered. So what we would do now is top stitch along the top of the pocket and then sew around the pocket after it's placed centered on the lining, and that becomes our large interior slip pocket. So let's look at the interior zip pocket. You'll need 2 linings and 1 facing, and you'll do this with the prep work in step 1 of the Emms Tote pattern. So the first thing we want to do is draw the box on our facing. So draw that centered on the facing and draw the red line, which is the sew line, and the cut. So what I've done is I've cut the hole out of my pattern piece so that I can mark exactly where that needs to go. It makes it so much easier. Then I draw a line down the middle of the box and the little diamonds that go from the end of that line to the outside of the corners as they're marked on the pattern piece. So if we mark the centers of our facing and we've got the centers of our lining marked, it's easy to line up where it is in the center. Then once we've got that drawn on the lining, we want to place the interfacing right side together with our lining and have that 40 millimeters or 1.5 inches down from the top. Now center it on the lining. So all your center marks should be cut or marked on your lining pieces. So what we want to do now is sew around that sewing box, which is the outside line. Now try and sew exactly on the line. So the next thing we want to do is cut on the blue line. So cut the line down the middle. And then we want to follow on the little diamonds that go out to our stitching. So don't snip your stitching, but snip as close as you can to the corner. So you see that comes right into the corner as close as I can get to the stitching without cutting the stitching. So then we want to turn our lining out through the hole so that it's right sides together with the back of the lining. Now this can take a little bit of smoothing, so smooth it down nice and evenly, and if you can, maybe iron it. I sometimes add a little bit of double-sided tape in behind mine just to keep it out nice and flat as you're sewing it, especially if I'm using something like satin or something that's slippery like I am today. Now, so I'm going to press mine. You get a much nicer finish if you can press it. So that's all pressed. Turn through and pressed. So now we want to put that aside and take our 2 pocket lining pieces. So these are our BB2 linings. Now we want to take our 2 lining pieces and our zip. So add a little piece of double-sided tape along the long edge of one of your lining pieces. And then place your zip right side up over the top of the double-sided tape. So your lining and your zip is right side up. Now you can either baste it down there as it is, or you can just put So I'm going to baste down there. Now you flip that up, flip it over, and put it so that it's right sides together with both the linings. Put double-sided tape on the other side and secure the tape to that as well. So both of your linings are right sides together on the right side of the tape of the zip as well. And again, sew along that edge. Now I'm on an industrial, so I get about a good 6mm or a good 1/4 inch on my zips. So just do what you normally do. Now I flatten this out and sew down the edge of those seams. It just gives you a really nice finish on your pocket. You don't have to do that. You can leave the seams and just put double-sided tape over the top. Now I'm going to double-side tape on these. So I'm going to put double-sided tape over the top of both those seams, but I keep it out of the edge by about 1 inch because you're just going to pull it off anyway. So you want to put your zipper pull on. Now, so I want mine to open to the right and close to the left. So if you put it on from the right edge, it is going to close to the right. So we want to put our pocket in behind our lining. Now make sure it's centered at the top. And now we want to sew around the edge of the box, fairly close to the edge, so about a little bit less than 1/4 inch. Now I'm going to pull my tails through. I've left them long, so I'm going to pull them through and tie them off just because it's on the satin and it looks nice and tidy. So it's up to you whether you leave long tails or whether you double back. And either pull them to the side and tape them, or get a needle and pull them through in between the layers. Now we want to pull our pocket lining downwards and smooth it down at the edge or from the top. Make sure the pocket linings, make sure they're both lined up at the side, and trim along the bottom. Now I put a clip in because the satin is so slippery. Then I flip the bottom back so that you can get a really nice cut along the bottom. So turn our pocket over and pull it back at the side. Now you might need to pull it off any double-sided tape, and we want to sew down the edge there. Now I am not going to close up the bottom of my pocket because I'm going to turn my lining through because I have done the divider pocket. So leave a biggest turning gap you can in the bottom while catching the edges, and then sew back up the other side. And that is our interior zipper pocket all finished. Now trim up your zipper ends if you've got any overhang. If you do that, please always melt it. And so that's our prep work all done for our zipper pocket on this lining. So we would then continue with our Emms Tote pattern as per the pattern. This is the curve pocket for the front. You will need an exterior and a lining. You will do this with step 1 in your preparation work for the Emms Tote pattern, but you will also still need the front to put this on. So we'll start with our curved pocket front. So I've got my exterior, I've got a lining, and I've got the front of the Emms Tote pattern. So I'm putting the magnetic snap on this, and as it mentions in the pattern, we come up 6 inches. Now I'm just going to mark this initially. I'm not going to cut it until we have sewn the pocket. So what we want to do is put a bit of Decavil Light on the back. I'm a major fan of putting Decavil Light on things when we're putting panels and or clips and things on. Now I'm just going to glue around a little bit of this because I don't want my glue coming through the outside. So I'm going to glue it within where the snap will be, and then you won't see it from the outside. Get a washer. Now you don't have to put magnetic snaps on, it's entirely up to you. It is a smallish slip pocket, so it doesn't really need to have one. Satin. And then we want one on our exterior, which I have marked as well, 6 inches up. And again, a little bit of Decavil Light. Okay, this one's easy, I can see the mark through that. Okay, you can see where they are, yes I can. So I'll fit that one because we don't need to worry about that. So I'm going to put the female portion in there. You can see the holes. And put a bit of tape over the back. And we shall carry on with our pocket. So now all we do is line our pocket and our exterior right side together, and we want to sew along the top curve with a 6mm seam allowance, 6 mils, 1/4 inch. If you haven't got pinking shears, just give it a small trim or even just little notches. So I'm just taking the very edge off the top of that. I'm not coming that close into it. Open that out. I might leave a little bit around the top of that. I think that looks quite... So we want to top stitch around there at a generous 3mm. Now I don't want to see my back stitch, so I'm going to start it down the seam. So there was our front pocket, and I've got a little bit of peek through on the top of that. So what we need to do now is fit the other part of our snap. Right, I'm going to put, do I need to put more glue? No, that's held that, that's cool. Actually, I think it might have glued up my holes. Nope, that's right. And again, always put a bit of tape over the outside. So that is our front pocket. So I'm just going to baste, make sure it's level. I'll line up the bottom first. And then make sure that's level at the top. Should be 1 inch. Yes, it's 1 inch on each side. So that that becomes your front panel for your tote, and then you carry on making it with the side pieces and the bottom and the top pieces as you would as per the panel. So there's no other changes you need to make to the pattern. You just carry on with the pattern from step 2 with it like that. Now you can put your bag tag down here. Now as you can see, I haven't done that. I don't want my tag on my print, and so I will put it somewhere else. So with the slip and zip pocket, you will do this with your prep work in step 1, and you will still need your front panel to put this on. So now we're going to look at our slip and zip pocket. So what we will start with is our tag, which normally we would put our tag down the bottom here, but this is going to be the back of my bag because you can choose which way you want them around. This is going to be on the back, so I'm not going to put the tag on the back. So this is the exterior piece of the tag of the bag. So what we're going to do now is just take the top piece of our BF1, so that's the wider piece, and put our zip along the top. So that's right sides together along the top edge of that, like that. Then we want to take our BF4, and add one side of that over the top. So that's right side together with our fabric over the top of our zip like that. And we want to sew along there with about a 6mm or 1/4 inch seam allowance. Like that. Then we turn that back, folding that down like that. And we want to top stitch along that edge. So whatever you're top stitching at, if you're top stitching at 3mm for your bag, do it at that. If you're top stitching at 6, do it at that. I'm going to do it in between. Oh, typical. So now we want to take our BF2, which is our top. Now we've got a longer side and a short side. Now the short side we want to put on the other side of our zip. So I'm going to put some double-sided tape on that. And we're going to line that up. If I do it that way, you might be able to see better. So that it's centered at the bottom here as well as on the edge of our zip. So we want it kind of middle point there and along the edge of our zip. Like that. Now we want to flip our lining back up the top like that and have that in the back of our seam like that. Oops. So it's folded over and it's in the back of our seam. So the lining is right side together and it's at the top of our seam. So if you haven't used tape and you've just clipped it, just put it in the back of your clips. And now we're going to sew down there at the 6mm 1/4 inch seam allowance. Slip that up, leave the lining down at the back, and we want to top stitch down there. Again, at the same amount as we did before, so it's even at the top and the bottom. Okay, like that. So flip that over and make sure it lines up, and that's the right size. So obviously my zipper is the right size. Now zips are not all created equal. So what we're going to do is clip along the top. So that's right sides together and clip along the top. And we're going to sew along here at a 6mm seam allowance. That's not what I wanted. Flip that back over. I probably should have interfaced this. Okay, And we're going to top stitch down there at the same as what we've done with these other two seams. So now we want to take our zipper pull. Now I put mine on from the right because then it's going to close to the left. And she'll trim that up. So clip your bottom. And trim up these side edges. Just go to there until I have that goes. So now we will just clip that on there, line up the bottom. Oops. Make sure they're level. So now we want to baste it down the bottom and around, or down the sides and around the bottom of that. Now you can trim off your zipper tab. Give that a bit of a melt. And that just becomes your front panel for your Emms tote. So that gets sewn along the top and you have got a slip pocket and a zip pocket in there. So this is the simple zip pocket. You will do this at step 1 with your preparation of the Emms tote pattern, and it will replace your A front piece. So you'll need your BG 1 and 2 and your zip. So what we're going to do is put a piece of double-sided tape along the top. Now you don't have to use double-sided tape again. You can just pin or clip or whatever you normally do, or even just baste your zip. So we're going zip right sides together along the top. Then we're going to put our lining right sides together with that and line it up with the top of our exterior fabric. So again, you can put another piece of double-sided tape on here, but I'm just going to clip it. And we're going to sew down there at a 6mm seam allowance. Yeah, that's fine. So then open that up and just crease down our lining at the back, flip it down, and we want to top stitch along that edge at whatever we're going to be top stitching our bag at. So for most of my bigger bags, I'm using 1/4 inch. Oh, my knee lifter's got a bit of a squeak. Right, so then we just need to flip our lining back, put it at the top. Now, if you want to have a full lining in here, you can cut this longer so that it goes to the bottom. And then we're just going to baste along the top. Okay, so now we want to put our zipper pull on. Again, I put mine on from my right so that it opens to the right and closes to the left. Now I'm going to baste down each side of that, starting on an angle with the pocket, and hold everything flat. Trim up the side of the pocket and keep the same angle going over your zip. Same with the other side. Make sure it's all flat. And again, that becomes the front panel of your bag. Now I do suggest giving that a press behind. So when you sew your side pieces in, they will go here and you'll sew your top onto that. So that just becomes a pocket at the top of your bag. Okay, so that is all our external pockets. We've got our simple slip, we've got our slip and zip, and we've got our curved. So don't forget, you will need the Emms Tote pattern to be able to use the booster. So just grab both or as a pack, simply choose the options you want to add to your bag and make something that is totally unique to you. Don't forget to subscribe, like and comment.